Welcome in, Cavs fans. 120-95. The Cavaliers fall in game one to the Boston Celtics. It's German, Spencer Davies, a little Spencer squared. Clearly, we are not in Boston for this series, but obviously a lot to break down from this first game. I think first and foremost, Spence, and probably my biggest overarching takeaway from this game is just I didn't think the Cavs played particularly bad. I think there's some obvious flow things to how they can play this game versus how they played in the Orlando series. There was a lot more spacing than there was in the last series. And I think that's a good thing in the long run for Cleveland. But I didn't think Cleveland played all that particularly bad. I think the Celtics, they're just that damn good. The game, I don't think the score indicated how well Cleveland actually played tonight in terms of trying to kind of keep up. It was just that team's really, really damn good. So you got to be near perfect to beat them.
Yeah, no, you put it perfectly, and it's funny because, you see a final score like 120 to 95, and you're like, okay, it's another no-show like what happened in Games 3 and Game 4 against Orlando, but it couldn't be the opposite. They gave it their all. They're coming off of a really tough Game 7, long game, a very physical game, and you mentioned it, man. Boston, they didn't have the same kind of defensive pressure, at least to start the game, that Orlando did, and they definitely don't have the same length and size as they do. And the Cavs took advantage of some early offense and got some stuff going. They hit 6 threes early. Isaac Okoro was great out of the gate, and it's just hard to sustain when the Celtics can make the threes the way they can. And they didn't even start particularly well offensively. They were just getting to the rack. They were drawing fouls. Definitely a little bit more touchy than we're used to seeing in the Orlando series. But to their credit, still scored 40 points despite not hitting from the outside. And then the perimeter opened up, and obviously Derek White going 7 of 12 from deep. I'd say at least 4 or 5 of those were with a hand directly in his face. What more can you do about that? Obviously, Jaylen Brown was terrific tonight. I think he went 12 and 19 from the field, and he was just on his game. The Cavs on the other end, Donovan Mitchell left it all out there again. It sounds so cliche to say Donovan needs more help, but Donovan needs more help. This is not going to be sustainable throughout this series, no matter how long it goes. I tweeted out that he's going to be gassed by halftime next game if this continues to have this kind of usage and other guys aren't picking him up. Evan Mobley simply have to be better. He's gotten some looks that have been quality at the rim, and he's leaving them short. They're on the cylinder. The jump hook just doesn't have any touch. Darius Garland did some good things. They took care of the basketball okay tonight. And Darius was able to do some pull-ups. He was able to turn the corner a couple times, get to the rim. So that's a good sign. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, Isaac Okoro hit some threes, but you're going to need more out of Max Strus. Max Strus is going to have to hit some more threes. Karis LeVert, I thought in general, the bench was just not good tonight. Yeah. Marcus Morris and Tristan Thompson were good at setting screens. That opened some stuff up for Donovan for sure when they were on the floor together, but it just wasn't enough. And it just goes back to kind of my thoughts from the jump before the game even started, is that Boston is just really good offensively. They're really sound, and everybody can give it to you. Even when Derek White wasn't giving it to you, you got it from Drew Holiday, who had a number of step backs and some pull-up threes that you're not typically used to seeing him take. Jason Tatum wasn't even that great tonight. Jason Tatum he was stonewalled pretty well by Max Strus and Evan Mobley and all them. So
I think the Jason Tatum thing is a defining stat in this first game because he scores 18, which is, a fine night for him. Nothing great. He didn't shoot very well, but he scores 18, and you have 2 other players. Brown goes for 30 plus. Derek White goes for 20, 25. And it's like you bring up they can hit you from anywhere, even without Kristaps Porzingis out there. I think it just speaks to their depth. It speaks to how just talented they are, that Jason Tatum can kind of just have a off night and kind of coast a little bit towards the end. And they still blew out the Cavs by double figures. I don't know so much that it's a Cavaliers, they're terrible, they shouldn't be here, as much as it is just this Celtics team is really good. But you bring up a couple key things. They protected the basketball really well. They had 5 turnovers. The Celtics had 6, so they actually had less turnovers than the Celtics did. I think that's a huge uptick from or a huge positive from the previous series to this one that should, be something that Cavs fans can look at and hopefully be encouraged by going into game 2. But to your point, man, like there's just it might be cliche to say that Donovan Mitchell needs more help, but I like it has to be said, Spence, because it's true. Like he's doing as much as he can. I put it out there going into towards the end of the third quarter. He has scored 133 points in 11 quarters of basketball. He went scoreless in that fourth quarter. He also was sitting for a little bit. I think, Bickerstaff was kind of managing his minutes there towards the end to see, are we going to make this thing close where it's worth putting him back in it? Are we not? He put him back in for a little bit, then pulled him again. And again, to your point on just trying to save his legs, I think that's probably the right thing to do. I'm out of adjectives to describe this guy. I mean, he is doing everything he can to try to will this team to victory. But to your point, man, like other guys have to step up. That's what you're paying Max Strus for. 4 years, $63 million. And on the contrary, like Derek White's getting paid slightly more than what Max Strus is getting paid. I think $7 million more, and he's out there making the shots that he's being asked to make. So it's and the 3-point shooting, I think, is one of the biggest things too, Spence. Like I said at the top, there's more spacing in this series than what the Cavaliers were being given against Orlando, which should bode well for them. But you got to knock down the shots, and I hate to make it such a simple thing, but basketball sometimes is like this, where it's a make or miss league. Like you got to hit from outside, and I understand like they had a terrible shooting series against Orlando. They started this series shooting 26% from 3 in game 1. That's not going to cut it when Boston's shooting 40%. At some point, that's going to have to come. Like if they have any chance in this series, they're going to have to knock down outside shots.
Yeah, and I don't know how closely you're watching, but Sam Merrill, I don't think he got a clean look the entire game. Maybe one from deep, but he was just coming off those screens, and they were stuck to him like glue. And it's just tough for him to kind of get his shot off in that way. So those minutes are tougher to come by if he's not able to get stuff going. It's kind of funny, like all the people that, the fans and people around town have been clamoring for to get minutes, they just didn't play well. And weren't able to get any offensive stuff, flowing from it. But, and I think another thing too, from this, defensively, I'm not concerned about the Cavs. They're just, kind of outmanned as far as the Celtics go offensively, as we were talking about, but they're going to need to be conditioned for this series because that ball moves, man. That thing zips around the perimeter and they are running multiple actions within one possession. Where you see guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday being the screeners for guys like Tatum and Brown. And they've got so much dynamic movement and motion with their offense. Whereas with the Cavs, as you saw today, a lot of Donovan Mitchell was driving downhill, trying to, do pull-ups, and that's their most effective, for sure. That's their most effective offense. I still think that's the most effective offense for Darius Garland, but you're not seeing a lot more than the high pick and roll that we're saying. And, they hit Evan Mobley in the pocket a few times, but like I said earlier, Evan's just not finishing on the jump hooks. He's not finishing point blank shots. These are shots that have to go in. You almost have to play perfect against Boston because they're so equipped and so deadly on the other end of the floor that you're going to get left in the dust if you don't.
Yeah, Mobley has to be better, especially as one of these members of the core 4 that we talk about in the starting lineup. And that was a problem for him last series. I noticed that a lot in game 7, where he's either trying to grab a rebound, he's getting stripped, he's trying to go back up, he's getting stripped. Like it goes back to, and I understand, like you and I have been 2 of the biggest advocates for Mobley. We understand he's a great player, and some of the stuff he does defensively, especially in that block he had in game 5 of the Orlando series, goes down in history as like an all-time play to kind of close out a game. I mean, it was phenomenal. He can do some phenomenal things. He's a very athletic player. But on the offensive end, like I think there's still things that are processing for him and still developing for him. And that's okay. He doesn't have to have it all figured out right now as you go to this series against a juggernaut Celtics team. But you're right, man. Like those are the areas where, and on this stage, it's magnified. Those are the things that he has to do better. He has to be able to finish at the rim better for this team to be able to rely on him in that area.
Yeah. And, I found it very interesting. I loved listening to Greg Anthony on this broadcast, just bringing up some of the things and the tendencies of Mobley. When he got some mismatches against smaller guys, and not smaller guys, but they're bigger guards, he was pump faking them. He was pump faking guys that are literally, he has 6-7 inches on. Why are you pump faking somebody in the paint when you can just shoot right over them or just go up strong? Now, luckily, in the fourth quarter, he saw some go down. He dove to the rim. He had some layups. He made a pull-up mid-ranger, so that's good. He saw the ball go through. But you can't be hesitant in those spots. You have to be aware of who's guarding you, be aware of how to attack them, and most importantly, just finish. Play with confidence, and I think he is playing with confidence. He's just not finishing, and that it comes down to that. I said it too. I mean, this is where you miss Jared Allen, not only on the glass, but with Jared Allen, he's got that jump hook just down pat. Yeah. And that's a pick and roll partner for Donovan Mitchell. And that he finishes the majority of those plays. So if you don't have the majority, the best part of your offense available other than Donovan Mitchell just taking over and going crazy, then you're in a world of hurt if guys like Max Strus isn't making the threes, and if Isaac Okoro isn't making the threes consistently. Even though he knocked down 3 tonight. So, again, it's going to be very tough for them on that end of the floor. And then going back to the defense, again, something I forgot to mention, a lot of these switches, there were some late timed stuff going on. Darius Garland has to hedge better on some of those, where Isaac Okoro actually got held up by Darius Garland, almost like he was getting picked by his own man, trying to stay in front of a guy like Jaylen Brown or Derek White, whoever it may be. It wasn't just Darius. Everybody was just kind of off because of, again, how fast the Celtics move the ball. They know where it's going next. It's not sticking for them unless, I will say this, Jason Tatum did play some isolation basketball tonight and did take some poor shots. But for the majority of the night, the Celtics just had that thing moving. We're constantly shifting Cleveland, and that's where it really got away from them.
Rotation wise, because I know everyone wants to harp on JB Bickerstaff. It's always a topic of conversation after these games. He did his best to empty the clip. Everybody other than Jarrett Allen, who obviously we know wasn't going to play tonight, and Damian Jones played. Niang maybe wouldn't have played in a closer game. He played kind of the last 340 of the game. And obviously we know he's had some struggles this postseason so far. But I mean, Spence, I know people are going to sit there and try to ridicule Bickerstaff because the coach is always the easy target. This isn't a game I walked away from feeling like I'm going to sit here and nitpick the decisions that JB Bickerstaff made to rotate guys in. I think he was trying to get guys playing time. I think he was trying to get somebody like Sam Merrill going. I mean, Sam Merrill played 17 minutes tonight. All the people clamoring for Sam Merrill to play more time. This is the series where he's going to get minutes because they need somebody who can hit those outside shots. He just has to hit them. He was for the night. He was 0 for 4, and I understand.
Smothered.
Like you said earlier, the Celtics defense was on him like white rice, or on white what is it? On him like on white like right? I don't know, whatever. Completely butchered that one.
Idioms.
I'll do better next time. I'll come back better for game 2. But anyway, I think there's a level of he has to hit him, but they also have to create other opportunities for him and get him open a little bit more. And if he's able to do that, then I think you're giving him some good looks. But he's obviously a valuable player that they need in the series. But I think that JB sort of tried to mix and match as best as he could, and it was again just a situation where it was like, this is I think a series where you're going to see. We know what the debate is kind of outside of the organization looking in. There's a lot of this was it JB's fault or is it Kobe Altman's fault? One built the roster and one has to use it every single night. And I think you're going to see on full display, that debate's not going to really get any better because there's going to be a lot of people sitting here well, this roster just isn't good enough when you're playing a Celtics team that is as good as this Celtics team is. Now, maybe, listen, I'm not going to say they're completely done. They're out of it. They can't win. It's going to take, like we mentioned earlier, playing a near perfect game to get 4 against this team. And that's going to be hard to do. So I don't like their chances necessarily, but listen, crazier things have happened, right? But that is going to kind of be the conversation throughout this whole series, I think, because I think JB is going to try everything he has in his arsenal. And if it doesn't work, then I think, you're going to be sitting there well, what can we do to make this roster better to compete with that team?
Yeah. And I think one that stuck out to me today that I liked, there was an action where Sam Merrill and Max Strus were sharing the floor with Donovan Mitchell, and both of them kind of weaved out towards the wing, and it allowed Donovan to kind of turn the corner and get to the hole. Maybe you see a little bit more of that. But then again, where does Isaac Okoro fit in there? Because he was one of your strongest players tonight, right? Are you going to play Isaac at the 4? And they did. They tried some 4 guards in one big set. They had Evan Mobley in there with 4 guards. They had situations where they brought Tristan Thompson in. And by the way, Thompson and Marcus Morris can set some hard screens, man. Whew. But they also, you're not going to get extended minutes from those guys at their age. So it's tough. And, here's my gripe, though, with the people that are kind of going at Kobe for the roster building. You wanted to get yourself somebody who could spread the floor, shoot, and really open things up. I think the Cavs have had more space this year. I really do. I also would look to see what he brought in, right? It's Max Strus. Max Strus is somebody who can get hot. He's a streaky shooter. We know this. George Niang, in this course of his playoff career, is a 40% three-point shooter in regular season too. You're not going to expect that guy to shoot under 10% and play himself out of the rotation. You're not going to see that coming. You're not going to see that coming. So he did something. He got you guys that are NBA players who have playoff experience and show veteran leadership. So I don't know what else, the community wanted. He went out and got shooters. One of them was a move-it shooter, and one of them was a standstill shooter. They're just not making shots. Yeah. I don't know what else you could do on that.
And that's again, I hate to make a loss like this so simple.
Yeah.
But guys, these role players that Kobe did bring in, this is the time of year, and I've talked about this throughout the postseason with you, Spence. This is the time of year that you paid Max Strus $63 million over 4 years for. And I understand, he was dealing with an injury late in the year. Maybe there's still something there with that. For him to sit out as long as he did, it had to really be bothering him because Max Strus isn't going to miss games. So maybe there's something there. I don't know. But, at the end of the day, it just comes down to they've got to make them. And the players that you brought in for those roles, they have to make them. Spence, we'll take a couple more minutes here. We appreciate you guys jumping on in with us. I want to sort of end, I guess, with something that was really encouraging for you and something that maybe was a discouraging thing from this game for you. And then we'll get out of here sort of talking about what a potential return of Jared Allen looks like for this team as well.
Encouraging, obviously taking care of the basketball. Like you said, they had less turnovers than the Celtics. I think they had just about the same amount of field goal attempts as them, through three quarters. So it goes back to the make your shots, thing. But I do like that, they were able to kind of find space. Like you said, it wasn't necessarily that they were, the Magic do a really good job of having you play into crowds. I didn't see the Cavs playing into crowds a lot tonight. I saw them able to turn the corner. I saw a lot of drop coverage from Boston, which I think is good when it comes to Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell getting their pull-ups. That is big time. So I think that they can get those pull-ups. I know it's not the sexiest offense, but these are the guys that are going to have to really will you as scorers in order to go somewhere in the series, other than, of course, the shooters making their shots. I also like Isaac Okoro off the ball offensively tonight as well, getting him involved in actions and cutting from whether it was the corners or from the other, the right or the left wing. That was very encouraging as well. Discouraging, I think Caris LeVert, we expect a lot more of him, especially because he has history against Boston where he can light it up. I don't think he particularly did anything bad. But he just didn't have his rhythm tonight. I don't think he helped you on the glass. He did play make, but you're going to need more from him as a scorer. I think there were a number of times where he got cut off at the point of attack because Boston's so good at kind of just putting their arms up when they get into the paint that he wasn't able to kind of finish or get a shot up even when he was in the paint. So find a way to get Caris going. He loves that little 10 to 12 footer, right? That little intermediate range. I think you can take advantage of that with Caris. He's really good at getting downhill, and I love what he does in transition. But if you can get that shot, then you're going to give yourself a little bit more of a chance because we know that Caris can drop. He could drop 30. He's that kind of microwave scorer. But his role is always so different for this squad, especially with Donovan Mitchell being so, ball dominant, which he has to be. And also Darius Garland having to execute the offense. So when you have those three guard sets on there, it's kind of tough for Caris to be the primary guy.
Well, and
that got this
it
fit.
stinks. It stinks for Karras too because he seems like he really gelled and fit into his role
Mhm.
a lot
And
better
he had a
this
hell of a
year.
game 7.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so you thought maybe that was a way to get him going, but yeah, he wasn't there tonight, and that is one of the discouraging things. I'll go quickly here, and I'll just say I think yes, one of the big things for me that stands out. We mentioned the turnovers. I was kind of going to go there, but I do think Isaac Okoro stepping up on the road because we talk so much about role players playing better at home. To see a role player perform like that on the road, I think is good for this team. And hopefully others now can sort of follow suit. Like Karis LeVert, like we mentioned, Max Strus, other guys. So they need more of that. And I do think, too, like the spacing is encouraging. Now it's just knocking down the shots and taking advantage of it. Discouraged, though, yeah, I think it comes down to, for me, like the most discouraging thing continues to be throughout this playoffs, just Max Strus. And I get that he's a streaky shooter. You knew that coming in. But when he's your big free agent acquisition, you're expecting him to show up on this stage, and I want more from him for this team, and they're going to need more from him for this in this series if they're going to have a chance to advance. So I think that's kind of where I'll go with that. If Jarrett Allen is able to go and can be reinserted into the starting lineup again, what looks different for this Cavs team? I know we kind of know bird's eye view how it looked when he was out there initially. But now, as we think about this, like in terms of attacking the Celtics, what do you think that does for this team? And does it help? How much does it change the series, you think?
Well, and the offensive end, it allows Evan Mobley maybe to stretch the floor, kind of how we saw early against Orlando.
He hasn't
When he
taken a
was out
three,
there.
I don't think, since
Probably
Jarrett's been
game
out of
2
the
or game
lineup.
3.
I went back and looked,
Yeah.
and I don't think he's taken a three since like early that Orlando season. I think you're right about that.
Yeah. So that allows him to stretch the floor and also be in the dunker spot because Jarrett Allen has that kind of gravity as a roller. So teams have to be very cognizant of where he's at on the floor in those pick and rolls. That's, I think, the most you're going to see offensively different. Defensively, it gives you your best probably at the rim defender. And it allows Evan Mobley to roam a little more. And obviously, when you have Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley switching, that gives you some solid options against a guy like Jason Tatum and even Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, and they were out rebounded tonight, 60-45. Pretty big discrepancy there. Obviously, Jarrett helps with that a little bit. Something that the Cavs pride themselves on, being able to get those boards. So having him back would be huge. We'll see if he can go for game 2, which we know is obviously coming up on Thursday. They'll have a day off in between to kind of practice, get off their feet, and get ready for game 2. Feels like I don't want to say it's a must win because you protect home court, you're okay. But like if you're trying to steal one, got to try to do it in game 2 and see if you can come home with the series tied. Otherwise, your backs might be a little bit more against the wall coming in on Saturday for the first home game of the series. Real quick before we get out of here, I wanted to give a couple of people shout outs in the comments because Tom S. on YouTube says the Spencer Squared podcast is a great podcast. So we appreciate that. And we also had Alex say, why are you both named Spencer? Just the names that we were given. I can't answer that. But to Tom S.'s point, we hope that you enjoy the show and that you enjoy the Spencer Squared podcast. So, guys, we can't thank you enough for tuning in. I can tell you we'll have more content like this on the Cavs Insider YouTube channel throughout this series. So we'll be back on Thursday night, breaking it all down with you guys. Hopefully it'll be a Cavs win and we get a different result to talk about. And obviously all throughout the playoffs, we'll be over at the field house for the home games of this series, and we'll be able to talk about it from there. And as always, you can also follow along with all things Cleveland Cavaliers over at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. We'll have you covered tonight with all kinds of content up over there as well. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll be back with you Thursday following game 2. But the Cavs fall tonight in game 1 as they have an 0-1 deficit to start off the Eastern Conference Semifinals. Take care, everybody.